You know what? Here's when I was paying attention. Yesterday between 1:30 and 2:15, because we heard from Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni, and I was locked in, especially to what Howie said yesterday, because I always think the Combine press conference, it's like the start of the offseason. You get a feel for what's going on. And this caught my attention yesterday. Howie asked, how are you going to spend all that extra cap room? Every team got about $30 million extra, and of course the Eagles could free up even more by making a few moves here. How is Howie going to spend the cap room? Here's what he said yesterday.
Well, just the way you take advantage of anything, you just bring in a lot of good people. I think that's the key is for us to bring in good people overall, to try to keep those guys in Philadelphia, to sign them to extension and build a culture of guys who it's important for them. The team's important, the city's important for them, and I think we got a good start on that.
Well, bring in a lot of good people. And Hugh, when I hear that, I get excited because I think the Eagles need to go all in this offseason. If they're going to win a Super Bowl next year, and look, the goal and the timeline, my timeline and your timeline and everybody's listening timeline might be different. But if the Eagles' goal is to win the Super Bowl next year, there's one way they could do this. I got just one way, Hugh. I need them to go big in free agency. I need to spend here. I'm not ready yet to trust all the young guys they've drafted. And they drafted some, in the last few years that are probably going to play here. But I'm not ready to trust, the Davises and the Smiths and the Blankenships and the Ringos of the world on defense. I need big-time players using free agency. And let me just point this out. In the two great teams that Howie has built, he's built two of them, 2017, 2022. He's built two great teams here in Philadelphia. Those teams were littered with free agents, with big-name acquisitions that he brought in to supplement what was already here. In 2017, it was Alshon Jeffrey. It was Torrey Smith. It was Nick Foles, who was a free agent. It was LeGarrette Blount. It was Chris Long. It was Patrick Robinson. And then 2 years ago, it was Hassan Reddick, and that's its own situation now. It was CJ GJ. It was Bradbury. It was Kaiser White. It was a trade for AJ. If the Eagles want to win the Super Bowl, Hugh Douglas, next season, I got to go all in on free agency. What are you feeling?
I don't feel that way. Even though I was not drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles, I was traded here. So I don't feel like you have to go all in free agency to win. I think you have to give some of these young guys a chance. And when you talk about some of those teams that won, well, you talk about the team that won the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. There were a lot of guys that when you talk about some of the biggest contributions, they were guys that were drafted Philadelphia Eagles. The core group. I think over the years what has happened, especially when – you talk about the culture of this team, and that's been a big topic in this offseason. I think that when you go out and you get hired guns or sales swords or whatever you want to call them, that people don't understand the culture. They're not endearing themselves to the city like that. I feel like you've had enough good draft picks, good young draft picks, that they should be allowed an opportunity to play. Now, I understand that with the way that this team is going, there's going to have to be some positions that you're probably going to have to go veteran with. I don't want to go all in and get the highest paid veteran when I think about making this team better. I want the young guys to play. We've seen on more than one example how young guys, if given the opportunity to play, they pay huge dividends as the season progresses. The biggest example of that for me is the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think that that's the route that we need to go. Because when you start talking to me about core values and chemistry and things of that nature, it hits different when a guy is drafted here and he knows what this team means to this city and things of that nature, as opposed to a guy that we get excited about what he did somewhere else and comes into the city because you paid him a ton of money.
Well, that is fair. And, Hugh, I understand that point. And I think if you want to keep continuity long-term, you try to find your Fletcher Coxes, right? Your next Fletcher Cox. You try to find your next Brandon Graham. And I get all that. They need to have a core in place for the next 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. But if I want to win the Super Bowl next year, I find it hard to imagine they're going to win the Super Bowl if Nolan Smith and Reed Blankenship and Jordan Davis all are no-question-asked starters. I need something more that I could count on. Like, I need something I know, like whether it be Jalen Johnson or L'Jarius Sneed at corner, whether it be Josh Allen or Brian Burns at edge rusher. I need stars. Because I don't think they have a good enough team as is.
I hear you, and I feel this strongly, that offensively, we have enough on that side of the ball that can carry today. And I know that we still need to answer the running back question and some questions about the offensive line and things of that nature. But I feel as a cohesive unit, when they become a cohesive unit, because they're not one right now, but when they get their stuff together, that they have enough on that side of the ball where they can be successful and they can carry today. And this young defense can get better as the season progresses. I'm all for letting the young guys play because I feel like when you talk about culture, for whatever reason, this culture fell apart last year. And in order to build culture, you have to have a clean slate, Joe, and you have to have some young guys, or guys that play the way that you want them to play that are going to come in and help cultivate that culture. Because I believe that with Coach Fangio being here, this defensive philosophy is going to change. It's going to change. And I feel like some of the guys that we have here, and I know money's an issue and guys under contract and things like that, but from their own admission, I feel like there are guys on this team that when you ask them to do certain things that you're going to ask them to do defensively, they're not going to do it. So in order to get what you need, in order to be successful, you're going to have to go with the young guys, the young, hungry Thundercats, and let them play.
You can, or you can get some new guys that are in free agency that all that extra cap room is there for. But Howie Hugh yesterday, I thought it was interesting. And I always try to read through the kind of the BS meter with GMs. Like, is he just saying this to kind of throw everyone off the scent, or does he mean it? Here's Howie yesterday on, the Eagles having to be okay playing some of those younger guys.
When we look back and Coach and I talk about it a little bit, it's okay to play some young players. It's okay for them to get experience and kind of see what you have. Based on where some of our guys were, they had the ability to sit back and learn a little bit because of the situations that we were in. I think going forward, it's going to be harder to do that. Obviously, just as you look at our team and who is making a lot of money, and we had a little bit of extra picks over the last couple of years. So I think that for us to play our young players, to develop them, I think that's something that Coach and I have talked about, to not be afraid of. That's why you draft them. That's why you sign them. And so you have that, and you'll have a depth chart where they'll be a little bit uncomfortable about, this guy necessarily hasn't shown it, but we believe in this player. And so I think that'll be an area for us to kind of maybe grow on and I don't want to say improve because we had good players at those positions, but it's exciting, I think, in a lot of ways.
It's exciting until the young players aren't as good as we hope, and then all of a sudden we don't have a good enough team.
You know what's funny about that? And I remember, I have a relationship with Coach Reed and the Kansas City Chiefs and some of the coaches. Mm-hmm. And I remember the game that we played and we beat them. And who was it? Who was the receiver that dropped the pass?
That probably was Marquez
Valdez-Scantling. Yeah, I couldn't think of his name. I was about to say something else. I was about to say call him something else. You know how we do. But I remember texting one of the coaches during that time, and I was like, dang, these receivers are garbage. And I remember saying that. And he responded, hey, you know how it is. They got to get better. And that was it. It's a long season. They got to get better. That's what you have to have, Joe. Because now when you talk about that receiving core in the playoffs, they came up big.
And he did make a couple big catches.
They came up big.
In Buffalo, in Baltimore, he did.
Bottom line is this. You have to be patient. That's the problem. We don't want to be patient.
I don't. I want to win.
We can still win.
Well, but here's what I'll say. And I know you're going to say that I'll let you respond. But what I'm going to say is it's easier to do that when you have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Like, the Eagles have never shown the ability. Not since you guys were here. You guys had a young team that grew together, right?
Mm-hmm.
But since you left as a player, and it's the Howie Roseman Eagles, they really have never won anything with young guys. They've always supplemented with big-ticket free agents. Alshon Jeffrey. A.J. Brown is similar to you where they traded for him off his first team. But that's a big-ticket acquisition. My thing is, what if these young guys aren't good enough and they win 7 or 8 games next year?
You drafted them. I mean, you have to allow them. You
don't have to. They could be part of it.
No,
you don't have
Joe,
to give them big roles.
have to give them. You have to see if they can play.
And what if they can't?
Then what you do is this. Like, say, for instance, at the linebacker spot, I was looking at some of the free agents that are going to be available. Mm-hmm. I would say that I would go into the draft. And I would draft a young linebacker, but I would go get a guy, say a veteran guy like Bobby Wagner. Now, he's a lot older. Had a pretty good year last year.
Yeah, he's almost your age.
Yeah, but he can still play.
No, he can still play a little bit.
He's a serviceable guy.
He is.
Now, I would bring Bobby Wagner in for 2 reasons. The veteran leadership and to try to usher and groom the young linebacker that I want to play eventually. Like, Bobby Wagner would be my on-the-field coach type situation. I don't have to go out and pay a whole lot of money, I would assume, with his age and everything and all the other young linebackers that you have out there. I don't have to pay him a whole lot of money. But the bottom line is this. It's still about developing players. when I think about some of the successful college teams, and I know the college and pro teams are different, but the thing that, say, for instance, Alabama does, they keep young guys in the pipeline, especially when you talk about those years where they had all those running backs coming out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they kept the young guy in the pipeline. And in order to be successful, that's what you have to do. Sometimes you have to be more patient with these young guys than you really want to be.
So I understand that, and here's what I would say. They could be patient, but if they're wrong, it's going to be a rough season. I don't think they'll win a Super Bowl if they play all the young guys. And I'll just do it like this. Like, I'll give you 4 young guys they've brought in here in the last couple of years. Sidney Brown, who showed some promise. Reed Blankenship, who showed some promise. Nakobe Dean, who they still seem to believe in. And Nolan Smith, right? All young guys. Haven't proven it yet. I'm not cutting them. They're here. They could play backup roles. But I'm going to go spend my cap room on Xavier McKinney. I'm bringing back Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. Go get Patrick Queen. Go get Brian Burns. They're going to have $50 million in cap room by the time they make some moves. I want to go spend it to go get a defense to go with this offense. 215-592-9494. That's how you hop aboard. Should the Eagles go all in free agency? I'm ready to spend all the money. I'm just dishing it out.
You got to let
Let's
these young.
go.
I need to figure out whether or not Nolan Smith can play. You know how I feel about Keely Ringo. You know how I feel about Keely Ringo and those young guys. Let them play, man. Let them play. That's how you establish. And another thing, Joe, that's how you establish culture, because you have guys that are clean slates, and you teach them the defense in the way that you want them to play. When you talk about L'Jarius Sneed and those guys at Kansas City, that's exactly what Spags did.
It is.
Look how they struggled the year they beat us in the Super Bowl early on.
I agree with you, but
now he's about to get paid.
I agree. He's become a tremendous player. But here's my little difference. Brett Veach can spot talent. I trust that he's right that those guys can become. I'm not sure how he knows how to do this.
But listen, we can't annoy Howie 2 times that dude and not allow him.
Sure we can.
No, we can't.
Yeah,
He has to prove it. He has to go out, and he drafted these guys. He has to give these young cats a chance.
Well, here's what I say. He's a 2-time executive of the year because he built a good team. It doesn't matter how you build it. You could build it through free agency. You could build it through the draft.
But see, this is the difference, because we always like, and this is the elephant in the room for me, because we always like to talk about how good Howie is at being a GM. Brett Veach is a better GM than Howie.
I agree with you.
Because of that simple fact. Because they took chance. Like, when you look at that Kansas City team, they are the template for success in the NFL. And I understand that they have Patrick Mahomes, but they take chances on young people, and it pays off for them in the most opportunistic time they can.
Quick analogy. Just a quick dumb analogy for you, all right? Quick one. If you're inviting someone over and the goal is to have a great dinner with that person.
Female?
Whoever you want.
It got to be female. I ain't making no dinner for no dudes. I'm just saying.
All right, you invite a friend over, a female friend, and the goal is to have a great dinner. Okay?
Is that my ultimate goal?
That's the first goal
you know what I'm
here.
Saying, Kyle? Is that my ultimate goal?
Definitely not.
Work with me here, everybody.
What is it? We talking about breakfast. Can we get some breakfast?
Whatever the meal is. The ultimate goal is that she enjoys the meal, okay?
I'm looking at it.
Guess what? Is she going to like it better because you cooked it, or is she going to like it if it's good? If you cook it and it stinks, it doesn't matter that you cooked it.
It all depends on, because if I put forth a strong effort, effort counts.
Wait a second.
No, sometimes effort counts, because listen, this is the first. Is this my first meal? Because if it is, I think she applaud my effort.
If the Eagles go 7-10, no one cares that Nakobe Dean was drafted here. Nobody cares. They want to win.
I feel like with the defensive coordinator that we have, and like. These coffers aren't empty, Joe. Like that's my thing. I know that there are some key positions that we need. And Howie even said this yesterday when he talked about we need to get better, especially at the corner position. That's what I'm talking about. We need to get better on that whole back end.
I agree. That's
so
why.
Let the young guys play.
Or sign Jalen Johnson and sign Xavier McKinney and bring back CJ. Let's go to the phone lines here. 215-592-9494. Should the Eagles go all in free agency? Hugh wants to go young here. Give the young guys a chance. Howie referenced that yesterday.